All right, diving in today, folks. We're tackling the Malabar pufferfish.
Tiny but mighty.
Tiny but mighty, that's one way to put it. Also known as the dwarf pufferfish or the pea pufferfish. And they really are, you know?
Yeah, they live up to that name.
They live up to that name. We're talking like the size of your thumbnail, right?
Absolutely.
From the Western Ghats of India. Just an incredible little fish. Super popular in the aquarium trade. You see them a lot.
Yeah, you see them online. They're really popular.
Really vibrant colors.
Big personalities, for such a tiny fish.
Yeah.
A lot of character.
Yeah, they really do. But, important to note, they are considered vulnerable in the wild.
Yes, very important.
So we're going to be deep diving into their husbandry and breeding today, looking at, the scientific literature, of course, but also like some of the practical kind of on the ground, in the tank, so to speak.
Yeah, real world
experience from aquarists, even some YouTubers out there who've got some really cool insights.
It's a wealth of information.
Yeah.
That's what's so exciting about this deep dive is we can really kind of pull from different areas of expertise to give kind of a full picture of what it takes to care for these fish.
Yeah, exactly. So, whether you're a seasoned aquarist or maybe you're thinking about like dipping your toes in the water, so to speak.
Pun intended.
Pun intended, yeah. This is, we want to give you all the essential information without like overwhelming you.
Exactly. It's about distilling it down. And that's really our goal here. To take all this information, synthesize it, and give you the key takeaways.
Yeah, that's the mission today. So before we get too deep into the nitty gritty of like tank setups and all that, I think it'd be helpful to kind of step back and just like picture where these guys come from.
Absolutely.
Like what's their natural habitat?
Yeah, their natural habitat. So they're endemic to, like you said, the Western Ghats of India. And we're talking very specific areas in that region, too. It's the slow-moving waters, so like rivers, lakes, backwaters, places where the water is like pretty calm and densely vegetated.
Okay.
So lots of plants.
Lots of plants.
Tons of submerged plants, loose litter on the bottom, tangled root systems, kind of like
a jungle.
Yeah, an underwater jungle. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And the water itself, it's soft, slightly acidic to neutral.
Gotcha.
So pH around 6.5 to 7.5.
Yeah.
And the temperature stays pretty consistent, 24 to 28 degrees Celsius. So 75 to 82 Fahrenheit.
Okay. Very specific conditions.
Yeah, it's a pretty, narrow range.
That they've adapted to.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so, we're picturing the Western Ghats, this beautiful kind of like almost like swampy, lush.
Yeah, like a blackwater type of environment.
Yeah, exactly. And we mentioned, they're considered vulnerable.
Yeah.
So what are the threats that they're facing out there in the wild?
So it's really a two-pronged issue, unfortunately. You've got habitat degradation, which is a big one. And then you've got overcollection for the aquarium trade. So, habitat degradation, that's everything from pollution getting into the waterways to, alterations of the environment itself.
Okay.
Like, dams or changes in water flow. And then the overcollection, because they're so popular, people want them for their aquariums, and sometimes that can lead to unsustainable harvesting practices.
Okay, so we've got like the natural pressures and then the human pressures that are kind of...
Yeah, it's like a 1-2 punch.
Yeah, exactly. So the IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, they've got them listed as vulnerable. What does that actually, what does that mean?
It basically means that they're at a high risk of extinction in the wild.
Gotcha. So, that really does make the whole, captive breeding and responsible aquarium keeping even more important. Right?
It's critical.
Yeah.
It's absolutely critical. Because if we can successfully breed these fish in captivity, then we can reduce the demand for wild-caught individuals. Right. And that takes some of the pressure off those wild populations.
Yeah. So, are they being bred commercially, on a large scale?
Not as much as you might think.
Okay.
And that's because their breeding, their reproductive behaviors, they can be a little bit tricky.
Oh.
They're not like the easiest fish to breed.
Okay, so that's something we're gonna definitely dig into.
Okay, get into it
a little bit later. All right, well let's meet the puffers themselves, right? Like beyond being tiny, what makes these guys unique?
Well, first of all, like you said, they're tiny. We're talking like adults rarely get over 2.5 centimeters long.
2.5 centimeters?
Yeah, which makes them the smallest known pufferfish species in the world.
So they really earn that dwarf pufferfish title.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. Now, are there like differences between males and females? Like, can you tell them apart?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You can usually tell them apart visually.
Okay.
So males, they're typically a brighter yellow, and they have these distinct dark stripes on their underside, their ventral side.
Gotcha.
And they're a little bit more streamlined, kind of sleek looking.
Okay, so the males are kind of the flashy ones.
Yeah, the males are the flashy ones. And then the females, they're a little rounder. Their bodies are more round.
Okay.
And their coloration is like a little bit more subdued, not quite as bright.
Okay, so it's almost like birds, right? Like you've got the brightly colored male trying to attract the female.
Very similar, yeah.
Interesting. And of course, we can't talk about pufferfish without talking about that signature inflation. Like,
that's their whole thing.
Yeah.
They're puffers.
They're puffers. So do they do that? Like, are they constantly pucking up, or is it like a defense mechanism?
It's mainly a defense mechanism.
Okay.
So when they feel threatened, they can puff themselves up by taking in either water or air.
Okay.
And that basically makes them look bigger,
right,
and more intimidating to potential predators.
Right. So it's like, don't mess with me.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, I'm way bigger than I look.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and, maybe a little bit concerning.
A little bit, yeah.
They also have tetrodotoxin.
Yes, TTX.
Yeah, TTX. Isn't that the same stuff that's in, like, fugu, the poisonous pufferfish that they eat in Japan?
That's the one, yep.
Okay, so...
Same stuff.
So these little guys, they're packing some serious heat.
They are, yeah. It's a very potent neurotoxin.
Okay.
And they accumulate it in their liver, their gonads, and their skin.
Okay. So, I mean, is that something to be worried about, like, if you're handling them in an aquarium?
It's always best to err on the side of caution.
Oh.
And, wash your hands thoroughly after handling them, just in case.
Yeah, right. Don't want to be licking your fingers after you...
Yeah, not a good idea.
...rearranging the tank or anything. Now, is there a difference in, like, toxicity levels between males and females?
There actually is. So females tend to have higher concentrations of TTX, and that's thought to be because of the toxin being present in their ovarian tissues.
Okay. So it's kind of like, protecting the next generation.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, I did read somewhere that captive-bred puffers might have lower levels of TTX.
Yeah, there's some evidence to suggest that.
Okay.
But, it's still best to be careful.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, individual fish can vary.
Right.
And you never really know for sure.
Yeah, better safe than sorry. All right, so we've got these tiny, potentially toxic puffers that can inflate. What about their personalities? Are they just like miniature poisonous balloons?
Oh, no. They have personalities galore.
Okay.
They're not just little, floating balloons. They have, like, surprisingly complex social interactions.
Okay, so tell me about that.
So, especially the males, they're very territorial.
Okay.
Like, you wouldn't think it for such a small fish.
Right.
But they're all about, like, establishing dominance.
Right.
They'll do these visual displays, like puff themselves up, darken their colors, and they'll chase each other around.
Wow, so there's, like, real drama going on.
There's a lot of drama going on in a pea puffer tank.
Yeah.
And so in an aquarium, if you're keeping them, you really need to make sure they have enough space.
Okay, so how much space are we talking?
So the minimum, absolute minimum, is 40 liters for a small group.
Okay.
But ideally, you want to go bigger, like 75 liters or more.
Okay.
Because that's going to help reduce the aggression, give them more room to spread out.
Gotcha.
And also, dense planting is key.
Okay, why the dense planting?
So that creates visual barriers.
Okay.
So the males, they can't constantly see each other.
Gotcha.
And that helps reduce stress and territorial disputes.
Okay, so it's almost like giving them, like, their own little territories within the tank.
Exactly. It's like, breaking up the line of sight.
Right.
So it's not just one big open space.
Gotcha. Now, do they get along with other fish? Like, if you wanted to have a community tank?
Yeah. Well, they can be a little bit nippy.
Okay.
They're known to nip at fins.
Oh.
Especially if the other fish are, like, slow moving or have long flowing fins.
Okay, so not the best tank mates.
Not the best tank mates for, like, your delicate, long finned tetras or anything like that.
Right. So it's kind of like if you're gonna have a pea puffer tank, it's a pea puffer tank.
Pretty much, yeah. It's their kingdom.
Yeah, it's their kingdom.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, all right, I'm sold. I want to create a pea puffer kingdom.
Let's do it.
What do they need to know about, like, setting up the aquarium?
All right, so aquarium setup, like we said, space is key. 40 liters minimum, 75 or more is ideal.
Okay.
Substrate, you want something that's soft and smooth.
Okay.
So like fine sand or smooth gravel. You don't want anything sharp
Okay.
They could hurt their delicate little bellies. And then the decor, this is where it gets fun. Dense planting, like we said, is essential.
Yeah.
So Java moss, anubias.
These are all like plants that can grow underwater?
Yep, they're all aquatic plants.
Okay.
And then floating plants, like salvinia, are great too.
Okay.
Because they provide shade and cover.
Gotcha.
And then you can add in some hardscape like driftwood.
Oh yeah, I love driftwood.
Driftwood's great. Coconut shells, even sections of PVC pipe.
Okay, PVC pipe. That's interesting.
Yeah, it sounds weird, but they love to hide in those.
Okay, so it's like creating little caves for them?
Yeah, little hidey holes.
Gotcha. And what about filtration?
So for filtration, you want something that's gentle
Okay.
because they don't like strong currents.
Okay, so like no power heads or...
No power heads. Sponge filters are great.
Yeah.
They're very gentle. They provide good biological filtration.
Gotcha.
And they don't create a lot of current.
Okay, so it's like creating this nice, calm, lush environment
Exactly. That's the goal.
that mimics their natural habitat.
Yep. As close as we can get in an aquarium.
Okay, so we've got the visual set up. What about like the water itself? Like what are the parameters that we need to be mindful of?
Water quality is huge.
Okay.
It's absolutely critical for these guys.
Oh, okay.
They're very sensitive to changes in water parameters,
Okay.
especially to ammonia and nitrite.
Okay, so those are the bad guys, right?
Those are the bad guys. So regular partial water changes are non-negotiable.
Okay, how often are we talking?
25 to 30% every week.
Every week.
Religiously.
Gotcha.
And then the temperature, like we said, 24 to 28 Celsius,
Right.
pH, slightly acidic to neutral, 6.8 to 7.5. And hardness, you want it kind of soft to moderately hard, so 5 to 15 DGH.
DGH, and for someone who's not like a super experienced aquarist, what is DGH?
So DGH is a measure of the total concentration of dissolved minerals in the water.
Okay, so it's basically like how hard the water is.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
And then nitrates, you want to keep those low,
Right.
under 20 parts per million.
Gotcha. So consistent monitoring, regular water changes.
That's the key
That's the key.
to keeping these guys healthy.
All right, so we've got them living in a palace, essentially.
It's a palace fit for a pea puffer.
A pea puffer palace.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about food. What are these guys eating?
So they are carnivores,
Okay, meat eaters.
strictly meat eaters, and a varied diet is really important,
Okay.
not just for their overall health, but also for their dental health.
Okay, their teeth.
Yeah, their teeth are constantly growing.
What?
Yeah, it's like they're always chewing on something.
Okay, so they need like a lot of hard stuff to wear those teeth down.
Exactly. So you want to give them a mix of live and frozen foods.
Okay, give me some examples.
So bloodworms, brine shrimp, daphnia, mosquito larvae, those are all good staples.
Okay, so like the little wriggly things.
The wriggly things, yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker. Snails.
Snails.
Snails are non-negotiable
Okay, why snails?
because they need to gnaw on those snail shells
Okay.
to wear down their teeth.
So it's like built-in dental care.
It's built-in dental care. Without snails, their beaks can get overgrown,
Oh no.
and then they can't eat properly,
Okay.
and that can lead to starvation.
So snails are not just a treat.
No, they're essential,
They're like a necessity.
a necessity. So you want to supplement with snails weekly.
Oh. Okay, so it's like snail day.
Snail day, yeah.
Once a week. Okay, what kind of snails?
Ram's horn snails or bladder snails are good choices.
Okay, I've heard of those. Those are pretty common in the aquarium trade.
Yeah, they're readily available.
Okay. Now, what about the babies? Like, if you've got little baby pea puffers, what are they eating?
So for the babies, they start out really tiny.
Okay.
So you need to feed them really tiny foods.
Okay, what's on the menu for baby puffers?
So initially, it's things like infusoria, which are microscopic organisms.
Okay.
Or you can get commercially prepared liquid fry food.
Okay, so it's like baby food for fish.
Yeah, basically. And then as they get a little bigger, you can start them on newly hatched baby brine shrimp.
Okay.
So Artemia napoli.
Artemia napoli. All right.
And then as they grow, you can gradually transition them to things like microworms and finally crushed snails.
Okay, so it's like they're graduating to the bigger stuff.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, all right. Well, we've got them fed, we've got them housed. Let's talk about the fun stuff. Breeding.
All right, let's make some baby puffers.
Yeah, baby puffers. So how do you even go about breeding these guys?
All right, so first of all, you need to condition the breeders.
Okay, what does conditioning mean?
It means getting them ready to breed.
Okay,
So you want to feed them a high-protein diet for a couple of weeks.
okay.
Things like blackworms, grundleworms. You're basically trying to fatten them up, get them nice and plump.
Okay, so it's like getting them in the mood.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And some breeders recommend separating the males and females during this conditioning period.
Okay.
So keep them separate, and then you introduce them into a breeding tank.
Okay, a separate tank just for breeding.
Yeah, special love shack.
All right, so what's in the love shack?
So the love shack, you want the water a little bit warmer, so 26 to 28 Celsius,
Okay.
and dim lighting.
Okay, so romantic?
Romantic, yeah. Lots of plants, especially Java moss.
Okay.
That's a good spawning substrate.
Okay, what does that mean, spawning substrate?
It means it's a good place for the females to lay their eggs,
Okay, gotcha.
and then gentle filtration, so like an air-driven sponge filter.
Okay, so it's not like glowing everything around?
No, you don't want too much current.
Okay,
You want it nice and calm and peaceful.
gotcha. Okay, so we've got the love shack set up. They're in there, they're feeling good. What happens next?
Well, hopefully romance blossoms.
Okay, what does Pea Puffer romance look like?
So the males, they'll really show off their colors.
Okay.
They'll get super bright,
Okay.
and they'll try to herd the females towards the spawning sites.
Okay, so they're like showing off and trying to impress.
Exactly.
Okay, and then what?
And then, if all goes well, the female will lay her eggs.
Okay, how many eggs are we talking?
So a typical clutch is anywhere from 10 to 30 eggs.
Okay, not a lot.
Not a ton, no.
And what do the eggs look like?
They're tiny, like 0.8 to 1.2 millimeters in diameter.
Wow, that's really small.
Yeah, they're like little tiny pearls.
Okay, so they're scattered amongst the plants.
Yeah, they're scattered all over the plants.
Okay. Now what happens once the eggs are laid?
Once the eggs are laid, it's important to remove the adults.
Okay, why?
Because they might eat the eggs.
Oh no, so it's like you got to protect the babies.
Yeah, you got to protect the next generation.
Okay, so the adults are out. How long does it take for the eggs to hatch?
So they usually hatch within 48 to 72 hours.
Okay.
If the temperature's around 27 Celsius.
Okay, so a few days.
It's a few days.
And then you got these tiny little baby pea puffers
Yeah, they're super tiny.
swimming around. Now, feeding those guys, that must be a challenge.
Oh, it's a challenge for sure.
All right, so what are we feeding these microscopic little puffers?
So at first you need to give them really, really small food,
Okay.
like infusoria.
Okay.
Or you can get like commercially prepared liquid fry food.
Okay, so it's almost like a powder or something?
Yeah, it's like a very fine powder that they can eat.
Okay, gotcha.
And then as they get a little bigger, you can start them on newly hatched baby brine shrimp.
Okay, so those Artemia nauplii again?
Yep, the nauplii.
Okay.
And then eventually you can transition them to things like microworms and finely crushed snails.
Okay, so it's like a graduated feeding program.
Yeah, it's a lot of work,
It sounds like it.
but it's worth it
To raise those little puffers?
to see them grow up.
Yeah, that's got to be rewarding. Now, how long does it take for them to, like, reach maturity?
So they can reach sexual maturity as early as 6 months.
Okay.
But some breeders say it's better to wait until they're closer to a year
Okay.
just to make sure they're like really ready to breed.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned earlier that breeding these guys can be a bit tricky.
Yeah, it's not always a walk in the park.
All right, so what are some of the challenges that people might face?
So one challenge is male territoriality.
Okay, so even in the love shack, they're still fighting.
Yeah, they can still get a little territorial.
Yeah.
So it's good to have a ratio of like 2 or 3 females for every male.
Okay, so give the females a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, give them a little bit of space.
Gotcha.
And also, you can rearrange the tank decor every now and then just to kind of like disrupt their territories.
Okay, so keep them on their toes.
To go on their toes, yeah. And then another big challenge is fry mortality.
Fry mortality, meaning the babies don't survive.
Yeah, sadly.
Okay, so how common is that?
It's pretty common, unfortunately.
Okay.
You can lose like 50 to 70% of the fry.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is, yeah.
So what are some of the reasons for that?
So it could be a few things.
Mhm.
It could be that they're not getting enough food,
Okay.
especially in those early stages when they need that like really tiny food.
Right.
It could be cannibalism.
Oh, no, they eat each other.
Yeah. Sometimes the bigger fry will eat the smaller fry.
Wow, so it's like survival of the fittest.
Yeah, it can be a little bit brutal.
Yeah.
And also, they're very sensitive to water parameters. So if the water quality fluctuates too much,
That can stress them out.
yeah, it can be fatal.
Okay, so it's really about like maintaining that pristine environment.
Consistency is key.
Consistency is key. All right, well, speaking of challenges and tips, I know we've got some really cool insights from the YouTube community.
Oh yeah, the YouTube breeders, they've got some great tricks up their sleeves.
Yeah, so what are some of the things that they've shared?
So one thing is they really emphasize the importance of live blackworms
Okay.
as a food source for the adults.
Okay.
Some of them even keep like a continuous culture of blackworms in the tank.
Okay, so they're just like grazing on blackworms all the time.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And they say it really helps with their health and their breeding.
Okay, interesting.
And then they also have some good tips for like collecting the eggs and hatching them.
Okay, tell me about that.
So one breeder, they use spawning mops in the breeding tank.
Spawning mops, what are those?
They're like these little mops of yarn or something similar
Okay.
that the females like to lay their eggs on.
Okay.
And then they can just remove the mop and put it in a separate hatching tank.
Okay, so it's like easy egg collection.
Yeah, it makes it really easy to collect the eggs.
Gotcha.
And then some breeders even use cherry shrimp in their hatching tanks.
Cherry shrimp, what for?
So the cherry shrimp, they'll eat any unfertilized eggs
Okay.
and they'll help prevent fungus.
Okay, so they're like little cleaners.
Yeah, they're like the cleanup crew.
Gotcha. That's really clever. What other cool tips have they shared?
One thing they mentioned is they don't try to breed them until they're at least an inch long
Okay.
because apparently they get bigger than their initial pea size.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they can get to be about an inch long.
Okay, so you gotta wait till they're a little bit more mature.
Yeah, a little bit more mature.
Gotcha.
And they also said that sexing them is pretty easy once they're adults
Okay.
because the males are so much brighter and more colorful.
Right, with those stripes.
Yeah, with those stripes.
Right.
And then one breeder, they said they had better luck breeding in groups,
Okay.
like a group of 10 or so, rather than just pairs.
Interesting.
So maybe there's something about being in a larger group
Okay.
that makes them feel more comfortable and stimulates breeding.
Okay, like the power of the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And for hatching the eggs, did they have any like special techniques?
Some of them did. Some of them use like egg tumblers,
Okay.
which are these devices that gently tumble the eggs to keep them oxygenated.
Okay.
But other breeders said they just use a simple like drain down tank method.
Okay, what's that?
So they just drain the water level down really low in the hatching tank
Okay.
so that the eggs are like just barely submerged.
Gotcha.
And they say that works just as well.
Okay, so there's different approaches.
Yeah, there's definitely different ways to do it.
Okay. Now, one thing I'm curious about, with the fry, did they all like religiously feed infusoria or...
And not all of them did. Some of them said that if the baby brine shrimp are small enough,
Okay.
the fry can eat them right away.
Okay, so you might be able to skip that infusoria step.
Yeah, potentially.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like there's like a real art to breeding these guys.
That's definitely an art.
And, hats off to the YouTube community for sharing their knowledge.
Yeah, they're a great resource.
Yeah, they really are. So, I think, as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that these little pea puffers, they're more than just a cute fish.
Oh yeah, there's so much more.
They've got, complex needs,
They're complex creatures.
fascinating behaviors.
And they're vulnerable.
Yeah.
So, we need to do our part to protect them.
Yeah, and it's really cool that, the aquarium hobby can actually play a role in conservation
Absolutely.
by, breeding these fish responsibly.
Reducing the demand for wild-caught individuals.
Exactly. So I think, for anyone listening who's thinking about getting pea puffers,
Do your research.
do your research.